This is the VOA Special English Agriculture Report. Scientists have made a genetic map of the tomato. Tomatoes are second only to potatoes as the world's most valuable vegetable crop. 8 years of work went into making the map or genome. 300 scientists around the world took part in the project to sequence the tomato's DNA code. Giovanni Giuliano, a researcher in Italy, is part of the Tomato Genome Consortium. He says they started as 10 countries and now have 14. Having the tomato's genetic map will help growers who are always trying to produce a better tomato. Mr. Giuliano says they now know not only what genes are there, but their order. Researchers published the genome of a tomato used by Heinz, the American food company, famous for its tomato ketchup. Ketchup is a thick sauce used on hamburgers, hot dogs, and other foods. Heinz's research manager, Rich Osmankowski, says the company knows what it wants in a tomato. Traits like sugars, and for Heinz, viscosity, or the juice thickness, and the redness of the tomatoes are all very critical traits for us, he says. Those are all controlled by a lot of different genes within the tomato. Mr. Osmankowski says genome sequencing takes away much of the guesswork for breeders of tomatoes or other crops that have been mapped. In his words, by having the genome information, we can pick out those tomato plants that have more of those genes. Until the late 1960s, the tomatoes that Heinz used to make ketchup often cracked open on the vine after a heavy rain. Heinz wanted to develop a variety that would resist that cracking. Breeders used the traditional methods of mating generations of different varieties. The tomatoes they were trying to develop not only had to resist cracking, they also had to resist disease. And they had to be easy to harvest mechanically. Finally, the company came up with the tomato it wanted, called the Heinz 1706. Mr. Osmankowski says the job would have been much easier if there had been a genetic map to follow. There were no genetic tools at the time. But the work today is not just about making better ketchup. Climate change may force many crops to adjust to new conditions. And Mr. Osmankowski says researchers are already using the new genetic tools to help fight new plant diseases. The researchers published the tomato genome in the journal Nature. For VOA Special English, I'm Carolyn Presutti. For more news and information for people learning English, go to voaspecialenglish.com. This is the VOA Special English Technology Report. Call it medicine on a microchip. Researchers in the United States have developed the first wirelessly controlled device that can supply a drug directly into the body. A small chip is implanted under the skin. It contains the medicine, which it releases at preset times. The developers say the device could improve the lives of millions of people who take medicine for long-term illnesses. A company called Microchips began developing the device about 15 years ago. In February, the company released the results of its first successful tests in humans. The tests took place in Denmark with 7 women with osteoporosis. Osteoporosis causes bones to become weak and break easily. The disorder is common among older people, especially women. Many patients have to give themselves daily injections of medicine. One type of treatment requires injections for 2 years. Robert Farah is the president of Microchips. He says many patients stop taking the medicine because of the pain and stress of the injections. As a result, only 25% of the patients will go through the entire 24 months of treatment. The microchip is a few centimeters long. It has small sections that each hold a single dose of medicine. Mr. Farah says the device has to be programmed with the times to release the drug. For osteoporosis, the physician will program the device, and the device has the ability to release a dose at a given time, every single day. For other diseases where the physician may want to alter the dosing schedule, they will have the ability to wirelessly reprogram that dosing schedule. He says doctors will be able to reprogram the device from a computer or even a cell phone. The 7 women in the study were ages 65 to 70. The researchers say the implants were just as effective as daily injections. And they say the dosage amounts were more exact than patients often give themselves. The microchips in the study held only 20 doses of medicine. Mr. Farah says it could take 4 years to design and test a version with the ability to hold a year's worth of medicine. He says the microchip may one day free patients from having to remember to take their medicine or give themselves injections. It may also be useful in treating other chronic diseases, including heart disease and multiple sclerosis. For VOA Special English, I'm Carolyn Presutti. This is the VOA Special English Agriculture Report. South America's Amazon is the largest tropical rainforest and river system on Earth. But the Amazon is disappearing at the rate of about 800,000 hectares a year. This deforestation is caused by an increase in agriculture and cattle ranching and the building of roads and dams. Another cause is the illegal cutting of trees for logging companies. Now, a new study says ancient Amazonian farming methods could offer valuable lessons for today. The study looks at the pre-Columbian period. Christopher Columbus and other European explorers began arriving in the Americas in the late 1400s. The researchers studied a coastal wetland area where ancient farm beds and canals remain unchanged. The site is in French Guiana. A widely held belief is that pre-Columbian farmers used a great deal of fire to manage Amazonian ecosystems. But the scientists say their study calls this idea into question. It shows that raised field farmers limited their burning to improve agricultural production. Jose Iriarte from the University of Exeter in England was the lead author of the study. Mr. Iriarte says fire results in the loss of important nutrients for crops. When land is not being used for farming, periods without fire are the most effective in rebuilding soil organic matter and preserving soil structure. So in this sense, he says, we interpreted that they were limiting fires because it was better to grow crops in these raised field systems. He says this fire-free method by the pre-Columbian farmers helped change the seasonally flooded savanna or grassland into productive cropland. Raised fields provide better drainage and soil aeration, and also hold moisture during the dry season. This fire-free method of agriculture would have been labor-intensive. It ended when up to 95% of the native people died from diseases brought by the Europeans. Mitchell Power from the Natural History Museum at the University of Utah says, once the Columbian encounter happens, we start to see increased burning and a shift towards dry land farming. People were then clearing forests and making their raised beds in the forests. The European colonizers brought slash and burn methods that remain a threat to the rainforest. Experts say at current rates, more than half of the Amazon's tropical rainforest could be gone by 2030. The study is in the proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. For VOA Special English, I'm Carolyn Presutti.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Health Report. Do people get happier with age? If you said yes, then you were right. A recent study found that people generally become happier and worry less after the age of 50. A team at Stony Brook University in New York asked people between the ages of 18 and 85 about their happiness. The researchers found that levels of stress were highest in adults between the ages of 22 and 25. Stress levels dropped sharply after people reached their 50s. Happiness was highest among the youngest adults and those in their early 70s. But those least likely to report feeling negative emotions were the oldest ones. The study also found that men and women have similar emotional patterns as they grow older. But women of all ages reported more sadness, stress, and worry than men. The researchers also considered possible influences, like having young children, being unemployed, or being single. But they found that these situations did not affect the levels of happiness and well-being related to age. So why would happiness increase with age? One theory is that as people get older, they become more thankful for what they have and have better control of their emotions. They also spend less time thinking about bad experiences. Happiness is not the only thing that seems to improve with age. Another study found that people in their 80s reported the fewest problems with their sleep. Researchers had expected to confirm the popular belief that sleep problems are connected to aging. The survey found an increase in sleep problems during middle age, especially in women. But overall, people reported that they felt their sleep quality improved with age. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Villarreal. From VOA Learning English, this is the Agriculture Report in Special English. Farm to Table is the name of a movement that encourages people to eat locally grown food. The farm to table idea has become more popular in recent years, but there is also a group that brings table to farm. This traveling group is called Outstanding in the Field. It says its mission is to reconnect people to the land and to honor local farmers by creating a restaurant without walls. Jim Denovan got the idea for this kind of culinary adventure, as he calls it, 10 years ago. He recently prepared tables for more than 100 people at Breyers Farmstead in Virginia. He and his 8-member crew arrived the night before. Chefs from a local restaurant prepared the dinner. Jim Denovan says the mission of Outstanding in the Field is to bring people closer to where food comes from and hear the stories directly from the farmer. Jim Denovan's brother is a farmer, and he himself is a former chef. He thought the idea of a meal served right at the farm made sense. So he traveled across the country and set up tables at farms and ranches. Guests bring their own plates to the meal, and when they arrive, the farmer shows them around. Matt Sacchini and his family operate Breyers Farmstead. He hosted the Outstanding in the Field event. He says the event connects his family with a lot of enthusiastic people. It is a great way of forming relationships for the future. He says his type of small farm business thrives on relationships. Jim Denovan and his team have served almost 13,000 people. He plans to expand the operation. He says he is planning to go to Asia, Africa, New Zealand, Australia, and South America. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Villarreal.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Economics Report in Special English. Levels of corruption like bribery, abuse of power, and secret dealings are still very high in many countries. Transparency International has released its yearly Corruption Perceptions Index. The Berlin-based group rates 176 countries and territories with a number from 100 to 0. Bigger numbers are better. The index measures the perceived or apparent level of corruption in a country. The group uses information from the African Development Bank, the World Bank, and the World Economic Forum. Corruption takes many forms. Transparency International calls it the abuse of entrusted power for private gain. One common form is bribery, the use of money or gifts to persuade another person to do something wrong or illegal. Corruption is not easy to measure because it is secretive. But the World Bank has estimated that about $1 trillion in bribes are paid every year worldwide. Stealing public money is another form of corruption. Huguette Lebel is chair of Transparency International. She says the problem of corruption affects millions of people and limits their ability to get essential services like water, education, health, and licenses. A group of small developed nations scored highest on the new list. Denmark, Finland, and New Zealand received a rating of 90. Among large nations, The United States rated 73, while China rated 39. The countries with the greatest perceived level of corruption on the list are Somalia, North Korea, and Afghanistan, with scores of 8. Robin Hodes directs research at Transparency International. She says Transparency International needs evidence about how corruption works and needs to know where to target the reforms needed to promote accountability and integrity. The perceptions held by experts, businesses, and organizations are important. The World Bank notes that countries showing improvements had greater foreign investment and economic growth. For VOA Learning English, I'm Carolyn Presutti.